Welcome to our Friday reflection from Tristan Owen Hughes' book entitled Opening Our Lives. Today's reflection for Good Friday is Facing Golgotha. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow at the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, make this cup be taken away from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked. "Peter, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were so heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed a third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners." There is a story about a woman in America whose husband was in hospital. She was very ill, and she had been going backwards and forwards to the hospital for many months. In the end, seeing her husband suffering so badly was just too much. It was a Christian hospital, and it had a large crucifix outside in the courtyard. So she stormed out to this crucifix and started picking up stones and big clumps of mud and throwing them in anger at the statue of Jesus. The security guards went to stop her, but the chaplain held them back. "Don't stop her," he said. "She is praying." In the Gospel stories, we learn about prayer through the person of Jesus. We see him going to find quiet places to pray, and he also teaches an actual form of words to pray. But during Holy Week, we are reminded that Jesus himself came from a Jewish tradition that had a wide and all-encompassing view of prayer. The Jewish people approached God however they were feeling, good or bad, happy or sad. We see this in the stark way of our passage today. At Gethsemane, after his Last Supper, Jesus pleaded with God for a change in the divine plan, that the cup of suffering would be taken away from him. This was a prayer of fear and desperation, in which he also asks to be saved from the imminent and appalling suffering. But as the theologian Dorothy Sayel puts it, to this plea Jesus receives no answer. God is silent, as he has been so often in the history of mankind. And Jesus remains alone with the repeated cry, his fear of death, his insane hope, his threatened life. That silence echoes what many of us feel at certain times in our lives. Sometimes God seems distant, and when we go through times of deep grief and trauma, he can even seem absent. Not long after Holy Week in 2020, with the country in a pandemic lockdown, one of my church members tragically lost her younger sister to COVID-19. In tears, she told me that she had been taken back to the first Holy Week and could relate more than ever to the continuation of Jesus' prayer of anguish and abandonment on the cross, where he quoted those words from Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Both in Gethsemane and later on the cross, Jesus refers to God as Father, indicating an intimate and loving relationship that allows him to approach God with his deepest thoughts, feelings, and concerns. That relationship with the divine is not exclusive to Jesus. He also offers us that closeness with God, and this gives us the assurance that it is okay to approach him with our prayers of protest and of pain. If we embrace that intimate relationship with our loving Father, nothing is too trivial or too important, and nothing is too painful or too secular to talk to him about. A father-child relationship allows us to lay bare all our experiences and emotions before God, our joys, pain, despair, questioning, and cries for help. The best prayer, wrote John Bunyan, is often more groans than words. Because of those very groans, there is even room for protest, as shown in the Old Testament, especially in the book of Job and the Psalms. Sometimes we feel like throwing clumps of mud and stones at God. The ancient religions that were around when our faith was in its early days would have seen this as offensive and blasphemous. But our faith is a strange path to take. It is a faith where the weakest are glorified, the powerful are toppled, a servant is enthroned with a crown made of thorns, and a God allows himself to be murdered in a terrifying and bloody way. And this strange Christian faith tells us it's necessary to take all our feelings to God, not just the happy ones and not just the sad ones, but also our feelings of frustration, pain, anger, hurt, disbelief, doubt, skepticism, disappointment, and disaffection. God can take stones and clumps of mud being thrown at him. After all, because of Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, because of the Last Supper, Gethsemane, Golgotha, and the cross, he knows how we are feeling. And when we cry out to him in times of grief, pain, and suffering, we know that his tears are mingling with our own. As the theologian Gordon Mersell puts it, our prayer becomes his prayer, our cries of protest his, a gratuitous and useless suffering his as well. And whenever any creature in gas chambers or hospitals or earthquake-stricken cities, or even in the steel stalls of veal calf pens, cries out in protest at the sick brutality and sheer grinding unfaithfulness of what they experience, Christ prays in and for them, not dispensing the answers, but sharing the questions, and making of their suffering God's own summons to a better and more just world. And so to today's reflection. Find a peaceful place to sit and quieten your mind. Now picture yourself at the foot of the hill in a dusty land. It is warm, but it's not sunny. In fact, you notice dark clouds are above. Toward the top of the hill, you see 3 crosses. You start to walk up the hill, passing people as you go. There's a real sense of sadness among the people who have gathered here, and they are looking up to the cross in the middle. You arrive at the foot of Jesus' cross. From the cross, Jesus looks directly at you. In the words of Teresa of Avila, notice him looking at you. He is looking at you lovingly. He is not someone harsh or demanding. He does not expect perfection. He understands your doubts, protests, anger, disappointments, and frustration. Give these over to him and simply accept his love. Now, in a time of quiet, just sit in the presence of your Creator, who accepts and loves you completely. Allow yourself to be loved.